You know the scene. The alarm screams into the dark, and your first conscious act is a negotiation. 5 more minutes. You swore you wouldn't look at your phone until after your work 8, but there it is, glowing in your hand, a gateway to 1,000 trivial worlds, and 20 minutes are gone. You promise yourself you'd eat clean, but the fatigue of the day conjures a ghost of craving, and the wrapper is in your hands before the decision even registers. You watch it happen, almost from outside yourself. And the voice arrives, sharp and familiar, a failure, a weak will, a broken promise. This is the universal ache of modern discipline. We are being sold a lie, a model of action that is destined to collapse under the weight of its own contradiction. We believe discipline is about control, a top-down, militant command issued from the conscious mind, the you that want to be better, down to the body, the instincts, the animal self that seems to crave only comfort. We set the rule, and then we stand guard over ourselves, a prison warden locking up his own desires. We white-knuckle our way through resistance, treating our natural impulses as the enemy. This is a tyranny of the conscious mind. It is exhausting because it is a civil war. You are split, and you are fighting yourself on 2 fronts, the part that commands and the part that rebels. Every act of willpower in this model is a suppression, and what you suppress does not dissipate. It gathers strength in the shadows. It waits for your guard to drop, for your energy to wane, which it always will, because you are spending it on policing your own borders. The mind is a brilliant tool, but it makes for a terrible master. When you appoint your conscious will as a master of your entire being, you ask a strategist to do a king's work. It can issue orders, but it cannot inspire loyalty. It can demand action, but it cannot provide a lasting reason for that action beyond guilt or fleeting reward. So you fail, and you interpret that failure as a lack of strength. You resolve to tighten the grip, to be harder, to control more. The cycle deepens. The guilt compounds. The gap between the man you are and the man you tell yourself you should be becomes a canyon of quiet shame. This is the inevitable end of the discipline as control paradigm, burnout or surrender, because you cannot sustain a war against your own nature. The world says discipline is about controlling your impulses, but the Zen master whispers a deeper truth from across the centuries. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. You have been letting the servant play the master, and it is running you into the ground. Your willpower isn't failing you. The entire system you're using it for is flawed at its foundation. It is a castle built on the sand of your own divided self. The SO if discipline is not a war control. What is it? To find the answer, we must leave the noise of your modern mind and travel to the edge of a different battlefield. Picture the aftermath. The smoke, the silence heavy with the scent of iron and earth. A lone samurai stands amidst the stillness, his sword notched, his armor stained. He has survived. He has even triumphed by any outward measure. But as he looks at his hands, a hollow echo rises in his chest. He followed every technical doctrine. His footwork was precise, his cuts were efficient, his mind was clear of fear in the clash. He performed the form perfectly. And yet, a profound question now gutters like a dying flame. For what? This is a crisis that follows every victory won through control alone. When your action is dictated solely by external form, the rule, the routine, the expectation, you become a perfect instrument played by no one. You achieve the goal and find only dust in your mouth. This samurai, in his moment of quiet devastation, stumbles upon the foundational truth. His perfect technique was an empty vessel. It was the why that was missing. The heart was not in the swing. In the traditional schools, they call this Shingan the heart's vow. It is not a goal. A goal is external, a point on the horizon you strain toward. A goal is, I will master this sword. A heart's vow is internal. It is a compass buried in your chest that gives every step its direction. The vow is, I am a guardian of what is sacred, and this sword is an extension of that promise. Do you see the seismic shift? Discipline born from control asks, how do I force myself to train today? Discipline born from commitment, from Shingan, simply states, I am a guardian, therefore training is what I do. The sword does not move because the mind whips the arm. The sword moves because the heart has already declared its direction. This is a realization that transforms a mercenary into a knight, a hobbyist into a master, a drifting man into a sovereign. Your life is filled with swords, your work, your health, your relationships, your mind. You have been trying to wield them through the cramped, exhausting calculus of control, weighing effort against reward, bargaining with fatigue, negotiating with temptation. You have been trying to move the sword with your hands while your heart is turned elsewhere, looking at an escape, a distraction, an easier path. The sword will always feel heavy that way. It will always rebel. But when your heart's deepest vow, your non-negotiable commitment to who you are at your core is clear, the sword becomes light. It becomes an extension of your will, not an opponent to it. The samurai in the smoky dawn sheathes his blade not with disillusionment, but with a newfound clarity. The battle was not won by his technique, but by the flicker of a deeper purpose that refused to let him fall. His next cut will be different. It will come not from the muscles alone, but from the marrow. It will carry the weight of a promise. You stand today in your own silent aftermath, surrounded by the notched blades of abandoned projects and half-held resolutions. You feel the same hollow echo. The question is not what technique should I use. The question that matters, the only one that matters, is what is my sword for? So you are left with the only question that matters. What is your sword for? The philosophical realization is meaningless if it stays as a fleeting feeling, a vapor of inspiration that evaporates by noon. It must be codified. It must be given a structure so durable it can withstand the erosion of your worst days. This is the act of forging your heart's vow, the deliberate, conscious transition from a man who has impulses to a man who is a principle. We begin by annihilating a shallow modern concept, the goal. A goal is a destination. It is external, a metric, a finish line you cross and then wonder what comes next. Lose 20 pounds. Make X amount of money. Find a relationship. These are ghosts. Once grasped, they dissolve, leaving you empty, searching for the next ghost to chase. They exist outside of you, and so pursuing them requires you to constantly look away from yourself, to compare, to measure, to live in a future that never arrives. A heart's vow is the antithesis of this. It is not a point on the horizon. It is the ground you stand upon. It is internal, identity-based, a continuous path you walk regardless of the weather. It is a reason you would pick up the sword even if no one was watching, even if there was no battle to be won. I am a man who respects his vessel, treats it with dignity, and fuels it for the long campaign. Do you feel the difference? The first is a transaction with the world. The second is a covenant with yourself. One is a target. The other is the archer's entire posture. The vow transforms action from something you must do into something you cannot not do, because it would be a violation of your own existence. This is a genesis of true discipline, not as a forced march, but as a natural gait. Now, we forge this in 3 domains, for man is not a single note but a chord. First, the vessel, your physical self. The world's goal is a sculpted aesthetic, a number on a scale. The vow is something like, I am a steward of this body, honoring its resilience through movement, nourishing its strength with intent, and respecting its need for stillness. Second, the craft, your work and purpose. The world's goal is a title, an income, a metric of output. The vow is, I am a craftsman who solves necessary problems with focus and integrity, leaving each project sharper than I found it. Third, the circle, your relationships and community. The world's goal is to be liked, to be validated, to extract, support. The vow is, I am a pillar of quiet strength for my chosen circle, offering presence over praise, and holding a space of safety through my own stability. Take a moment. Feel the substance of these statements. They are not checklists. They are declarations of being. They describe a man who already exists in your future, and your only task is to align your present actions with his character. This is a writing exercise that will anchor you. Do not rush it. Take a single sheet of paper. At the top, write, my heart's vow. Below it, write 3 headings. For my vessel, for my craft, for my circle. And now, for each, craft 1 sentence. Not what you want to achieve, but who you are committed to being. This is not an affirmation to fool your mind. It is an architect's blueprint, drawn from the deepest material of your values. It may take time. The words must feel true, not just impressive. They must resonate in your chest with a quiet, solid tone. Once written, this vow becomes your silent counsel. In every moment of decision, of friction, of temptation. You will no longer ask the exhausting question, do I have the willpower? You will ask the infinitely more powerful one, what would the man I am committed to being automatically do here? This question bypasses the civil war. It does not debate with the impulse. It simply consults a higher authority, the future self you have already pledged allegiance to. The answer, once your vow is clear, becomes obvious. The choice is no longer between pleasure and pain, but between fidelity and betrayal. And a man who has forged a heart's vow knows exactly who he is. He is the kind of man who keeps his promises, especially the ones he makes to himself. With his vow etched into your spirit, you possess a compass. But a compass is useless if you never stop to read it. In the deafening noise of the daily grind, the silent frequency of your commitment can be drowned out by sirens of urgency, the static of distraction, the loud, shallow demands of a world that reward reaction over alignment. This is why the bridge between a vow written on paper and a vow lived in bone must be built daily, through deliberate ceremony. These are not productivity hacks. They are tuning rituals. They are the conscious act of aligning your entire being, your conscious mind, your subconscious drives, your physical energy with the direction of your heart's vow. We begin at dawn, in the quiet space where the world has not yet imposed its agenda. This is the moment for Kaigan, less a prayer of supplication and more a prayer of declaration. You do not beg for strength from an external source. You actively configure your own inner source. In the first quiet minutes, before the phone lights up, before the world's voice enters a room, you sit with your vow. You do not chant it mindlessly. You review it visually, emotionally. You see the man described in those lines. You feel the solidity of his posture, the calm in his gaze, the deliberate pace of his actions. And then you mentally walk through the coming day. You see the critical junctions, the moment you choose breakfast, the first hour wake, the inevitable afternoon lag, the evening decision between screen and substance. At each junction, you do not plan a struggle. You simply implant the image. Here is where the committed man chooses a nourishing food. Here is where he begins his most important task without opening a browser. Here is where he takes 5 minutes of stillness instead of scrolling. This is not positive thinking. This is subconscious programming. You are downloading a behavioral script directly from your future self, bypassing the debating society of your conscious will. It is setting the dial of your internal radio to the frequency of your vow, so that when the noise of the day tries to play, there is a clearer, stronger signal already broadcasting from within. The day then unfolds not as a series of battles to be won, but as a series of opportunities to resonate with your own chosen tone. When action flows from this place, it enters a state of motion, no mind. It is not thoughtless. It is free of the frantic, calculating, should I or shouldn't I chatter. The action simply emerges, appropriate and direct, because the path has been. Support. The vow is, I am a pillar of quiet strength for my chosen circle, offering presence over praise, and holding a space of safety through my own stability. Take a moment. Feel the substance of these statements. They are not checklists. They are declarations of being. They describe a man who already exists in your future, and your only task is to align your present actions with his character. This is a writing exercise that will anchor you. Do not rush it. Take a single sheet of paper. At the top, write, my heart's vow. Below it, write 3 headings. For my vessel, for my craft, for my circle. And now, for each, craft 1 sentence. Not what you want to achieve, but who you are committed to being. This is not an affirmation to fool your mind. It is an architect's blueprint, drawn from the deepest material of your values. It may take time. The words must feel true, not just impressive. They must resonate in your chest with a quiet, solid tone. Once written, this vow becomes your silent counsel. In every moment of decision, of friction, of temptation, you will no longer ask the exhausting question, do I have the willpower? You will ask the infinitely more powerful one, what would the man I am committed to being automatically do here? This question bypasses the civil war. It does not debate with the impulse. It simply consults a higher authority, the future self you have already pledged allegiance to. The answer, once your vow is clear, becomes obvious. The choice is no longer between pleasure and pain, but between fidelity and betrayal. And a man who has forged a heart's vow knows exactly who he is. He is the kind of man who keeps his promises, especially the ones he makes to himself. With his vow etched into your spirit, you possess a compass. But a compass is useless if you never stop to read it. In the deafening noise of the daily grind, the silent frequency of your commitment can be drowned out by sirens of urgency, the static of distraction, the loud, shallow demands of a world that reward reaction over alignment. This is why the bridge between a vow written on paper and a vow lived in bone must be built daily, through deliberate ceremony. These are not productivity hacks. They are tuning rituals. They are the conscious act of aligning your entire being, your conscious mind, your subconscious drives, your physical energy with the direction of your heart's vow. We begin at dawn, in the quiet space where the world has not yet imposed its agenda. This is the moment for Kaigan, less a prayer of supplication and more a prayer of declaration. You do not beg for strength from an external source. You actively configure your own inner source. In the first quiet minutes, before the phone lights up, before the world's voice enters a room, you sit with your vow. You do not chant it mindlessly. You review it visually, emotionally. You see the man described in those lines. You feel the solidity of his posture, the calm in his gaze, the deliberate pace of his actions. And then you mentally walk through the coming day. You see the critical junctions, the moment you choose breakfast, the first hour wake, the inevitable afternoon lag, the evening decision between screen and substance. At each junction, you do not plan a struggle. You simply implant the image. Here is where the committed man chooses a nourishing food. Here is where he begins his most important task without opening a browser. Here is where he takes 5 minutes of stillness instead of scrolling. This is not positive thinking. This is subconscious programming. You are downloading a behavioral script directly from your future self, bypassing the debating society of your conscious will. It is setting the dial of your internal radio to the frequency of your vow, so that when the noise of the day tries to play, there is a clearer, stronger signal already broadcasting from within. The day then unfolds not as a series of battles to be won, but as a series of opportunities to resonate with your own chosen tone. When action flows from this place, it enters a state of motion, no mind. It is not thoughtless. It is free of the frantic, calculating, should I or shouldn't I chatter. The action simply emerges, appropriate and direct, because the path has been cleared in advance. Then, as day gives way to night, you perform the second ritual, Kaizen. This is not a guilt-ridden autopsy of failure. It is a forensic celebration of alignment. You sit again with your vow. You review the day not with the eye of a critic, but with the eye of a scientist studying a successful experiment. Your single question is, where today did I resonate? Find those moments. The time you walked past a distraction. The sentence you wrote that felt true. The calm breath you took instead of a reactive outburst. Sit with the feeling of those resonances. Let the nervous system learn that this is what success feels like, not a trophy, but a profound internal congruence. This positive reinforcement is the steel that hardens a new neural pathway. If you find a point of dissonance where you acted against a vow, you do not flagellate yourself. You examine it with detached curiosity. What frequency was I tuned to in that moment? What fear? What lack? You identify the interference, not to judge it, but to know its signature, so you can recognize its static faster next time. The morning Kaigen sets the frequency. The evening Kaizen confirms the signal and adjusts the receiver. Together, they form a daily feedback loop of alignment, a gentle but relentless process of tuning yourself into the man you are committed to become. This is a machinery of effortless discipline. You are not pushing a boulder uphill every day. You are, through these rituals, gradually, imperceptibly, tilting the entire hill. Here lies the critical nuance that separates the fanatic from the master, the rigid from the resilient. A shallow understanding of commitment mistakes it for an unyielding obsession with form. It creates a brittle man, hostage to his own routine, who crumbles when life, as it always does, invites deviation. This is a trap of the false ascetic, who believes strength is shown in never bending. But the ancient principle of Jew whispers a deeper truth. In the martial arts, Jew is a principle of softness, flexibility, yielding. It does not mean weakness. It is a tactical intelligence of the willow branch that bends under the weight of the snow, while a rigid oak splinters. Your heart's vow is the oak's deep, unwavering root structure. Your daily actions are the branches. The root does not change. It provides unshakable stability. But the branches must sway, must adapt to the storm, or they will snap. This is a paradox. The man most committed to his essence is also the one most strategically flexible in his methods. The world preaches a cheap, binary discipline. Never break the chain. Never miss a day. Never compromise. It is a slogan for machines, not for living men of purpose. This rigidity confuses the ritual for the result, the map for the territory. Your vow is the territory. The training, the diet, the work routine, these are maps. And when the terrain shifts, a wise man redraws his line of advance. Only a fool insists the cliffs aren't there because his map doesn't show them. Consider the scenarios that test cheap discipline to destruction. You are ill, your body fevered and weak. The false disciple, enslaved to the form, forces himself through the brutal workout. He proves his toughness while insulting his vessel, prolonging his recovery, and violating the deeper vow to be a steward of his health. The man guided by due and true commitment listens. He yields. He rests. His action is not skipping. It is a deeper, more intelligent expression of his vow. I honor this vessel. Through the deliberate act of recovery, a family emergency arises. The rigid man, chained to his desk, prioritizes a deadline over the human being, mistaking professional diligence for moral fortitude. The committed man knows his circle is part of his vow. He closes the laptop. He goes. His commitment to being a pillar of strength is not demonstrated by his absenteeism, but by his profound presence where it is most critically required. In both cases, the superficial form of discipline is broken, but the spirit of the vow is fulfilled at a higher, more intelligent level. This is the masterstroke that prevents burnout, not by quitting, but by adapting the strategy to serve the ultimate objective. The samurai did not blindly charge every enemy. He assessed, he feinted. He sometimes withdrew to secure a superior position. His commitment was to victory and protection, not to a specific, predetermined sequence of swings. Your commitment is to the man described in your heart's vow, not to the brittle checklist of habits you created on a sunlit morning when all was well. Jude teaches us that power is not stored in rigidity, but in controlled elasticity. It is the ability to absorb the shock of the unexpected, to channel its force, and to return to your center, rooted yet unbroken. This is the flexibility of the committed man. He is not tossed by every wind or whim, for his root is deep, but he does not stand stiff against the hurricane, for he understands that survival and ultimate victory sometimes requires a graceful, tactical bend. His promise is not to a specific action, but to a specific outcome, the integrity of his being. And sometimes, the only way to stay true to that promise is to have the courage to intelligently, and without guilt, change a plan. This is where philosophy meets a fortress. A vow in a journal is a theory. A vow that withstands the siege of a bad week, a toxic environment, a wave of internal doubt. That is a lived truth. In the old traditions, the deepest, most essential principles of a school were called gokui, the ultimate secrets, transmitted only to those proven ready and guarded with a fierce, silent vigilance. Your heart's vow is your gokui. It is not for public display, for casual debate, or for the draining energy of others' opinions. It is the innermost chamber of your personal citadel, and a citadel must be defended. This defense is not paranoia. It is a prudent stewardship of something sacred. The first wall is environmental gokui. You do not rely on willpower to resist temptation in the moment. You architect a moment to make temptation irrelevant. The man committed to his vessel does not keep cheap food in the house, making every meal a battle of denial. He makes the aligned choice the only easy choice. He designs his physical and digital space to resonate with his vow, removing friction for the right action and adding friction for the wrong one. His environment becomes a silent ally, constantly tuning him back to his frequency. The second wall is social gokui. You will be tested. People, often unconsciously, will invite you back to your older, smaller self, the one who overindulges, who complains, who procrastinates. To loudly declare your transformation is to invite resistance. Instead, you practice the quiet declaration. You do not preach your vow. You embody it, and you let your changed behavior speak in a calm, firm dialect. No, thank you is a complete sentence. I have a prior commitment to yourself is a legitimate and unassailable reason. You protect your vow not by building moats of hostility, but by maintaining gates of discernment, knowing what and who gets across the bridge into your energy. The final, most critical wall is internal Gokui. This is a protocol for when the defenses are breached, when a stray thought, a moment of fatigue, a spark of old fear manages to slip through and cloud your alignment. You do not engage it in debate. You enact the right of return. It is a 60-second sovereign ritual. You stop. You plant your feet. You take one long, slow breath that travels down to your roots. On the exhale, you visualize the words of your heart's vow, not as text, but as a solid, weighted object in your center. You feel its truth. You remember the man you are committed to being. This is not fighting the impulse. It is simply reoccupying the throne of your own spirit. It is the instantaneous recalibration of your entire being back to its true north. This rite is your spiritual keystone, holding the arch of your commitment against any pressure. Guarding your Gokui means understanding that the world, and even parts of your own mind, are not neutral. They have momentum, and that momentum often flows toward distraction, comfort, and fragmentation. To uphold a vow is to consciously, daily, choose a different current. It is to become the guardian of a silent, potent secret, the secret of who you truly are and what you are truly for. This guardianship is the highest form of self-respect. It is not a burden, but a privilege. It turns every potential distraction into a reaffirmation of your sovereignty. The vow is no longer just an idea you return to. It becomes a ground you stand upon, the air in your fortress, and the reason you stand watch. And so you arrive here, not at an end, but at the beginning of a different order. The frantic seeker, the man who viewed discipline as a series of grim victories over himself, has quietly dissolved. In his place stands a different figure, one who moves with a kind of gravitational calm. This is a state of Shugyo. It is often clumsily translated as ascetic practice or austere training, which conjures images of grim deprivation, a man punishing himself toward a distant prize. But this is a shallow reading. True Shugyo is better understood as aesthetic austerity, a conscious, even artistic, selection of what is essential and the elegant removal of all that is not. It is a practice pursued not for a future reward, but because the practice itself is a reward. The polishing is a shine. When action flows seamlessly from commitment, the line between work and joy blurs and then vanishes. The morning ritual is not a hurdle to clear. It is a first, cherished movement of the day's symphony. The focused hour craft is not a drain on your energy, but a channel for it. This is where the struggle is utterly reframed. It is no longer a struggle against yourself. It becomes keiko, practice, repetition, the dedicated polish applied to the spirit. The resistance you feel is not an enemy to be defeated. It is the friction necessary to create the shine. You no longer fight the urge for distraction. You simply notice its arrival, acknowledge its hollow shape, and let it pass like a cloud through a vast sky, because it holds no relevance to the man you are committed to being. There is no internal civil war. There is only the quiet, steady application of pressure toward alignment. Revisit that opening scene now, through this new lens. The alarm sounds in the dark. There is no negotiation, because there is no opposing faction to negotiate with. There is only the man who honors his vessel, rising. The phone glows on the bedside, a silent siren, but his hand does not reach for it, not out of restraint, but out of disinterest. Its offerings are whispers in a language he no longer speaks. The craving arises later in the day, a ghost of an old hunger, and he feels its pull, notes its presence with detached curiosity, and chooses a nourishing option not because he should, but because it is the only choice that resonates with the truth of his vow. The finish line you once chased has disappeared. In its place is a path itself, stretching forward and backward, infinitely, and you realize, with a profound and quiet shock, that you are not traveling on the path. You have become the path. The commitment is the ground beneath your feet. The disciplined actions are your footsteps. There is no destination to reach, only the integrity of the next step, and the next, taken in perfect resonance with the heart's deepest vow. This is the unforced path. This is a life of Shugyo. The war is over. The practice has become your home.